I saw them before they saw me. Her lipstick was smeared across his mouth like a child's finger painting. My engagement ring hung around her neck on a thin gold chain, swaying with every breath she took. Ethan's hand was still resting on her waist, casual, possessive, like he had already forgotten I existed. In my first life, I dropped to my knees in this exact hotel corridor and begged her not to leave. I pleaded, I cried, I made myself small so she would stay. This time, I looked at them and remembered exactly where that begging had led me. I said, "The wedding is off." Olivia blinked, slow and confused. Ethan's hand slid off her waist like it had been burned. For 3 full seconds, neither of them understood what I had just said. That almost made me laugh. 10 years ago, I would have given anything to see Olivia Sterling look at me with that much uncertainty. 5 minutes ago, I would have thought the same thing. Then I remembered dying. Not metaphorically, not heartbreak, not humiliation, actual death. Cold concrete against my cheek, blood filling my mouth, a parking garage beneath a courthouse. Ethan standing over me in a dark coat, rainwater dripping from the bumper of the car behind him. Olivia farther away, unable to meet my eyes, and a brown evidence folder pressed against my chest. Sophia Hart's folder. The folder she had spent the last year of her life building for me. The folder I had finally obtained 3 days after learning she was dead. In that first life, I lost my company, my reputation, 6 years of freedom, and the only woman who had never asked me to shrink so she could feel larger. Then Ethan took the final thing I had left, my life. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing outside room 1807 of the Halcyon Hotel, 11 days before my wedding. Olivia and Ethan were in front of me, exactly where they had been 20 years of suffering ago. Adrian. Olivia recovered first. She stepped away from Ethan and pulled the collar of her silk blouse closed. "It isn't what you think." I almost laughed out loud. The sentence was identical, same breath, same irritated crease between her brows, same faint trace of champagne on her voice. In my first life, I had answered, "Then tell me what it is." She had talked for 47 minutes. Ethan was upset, his father was sick, he'd drunk too much, she only came upstairs to help him. The kiss meant nothing. The unbuttoned blouse meant nothing. The lipstick on Ethan's mouth meant nothing. The hotel room meant nothing. I had made myself believe every word because the alternative was admitting that the woman I loved for 8 years preferred my best friend whenever I wasn't useful enough. Then I apologized to her for doubting her. That memory disgusted me more than their betrayal ever could. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Olivia's expression softened, she thought I was about to ask for an explanation. Instead, I opened the shared wedding group and typed one sentence. The wedding between Olivia Sterling and Adrian Mercer has been cancelled. All vendors will be compensated under the existing contracts. Please direct financial questions to Mercer Holdings. I pressed send. Olivia lunged forward. "What are you doing?" "Canceling the wedding." "Adrian, stop." I looked at her, and she froze. I didn't recognize my own face reflected in the dark window behind her, or maybe I finally did. I said, "Stop." Olivia lowered her voice, trying to sound reasonable. "You are angry. Fine. You have every right to be angry, but you don't make a decision like this in a hallway." "I just did." Ethan stepped forward, his tone smooth and practiced. "Adrian, don't blow up your entire life over one misunderstanding." I turned toward him. In my first life, he had been my closest friend since business school. He had joined Meridian Systems 3 months after I founded it. I gave him 10% equity when the company was barely worth 2 desks and an unpaid electricity bill. He became COO because I trusted him. When investors questioned him, I defended him. When a logistics contract failed because of his mistake, I took the blame publicly. When Olivia said he needed more authority, I gave it to him. When he wanted access to the founders' voting pool, I almost signed it over. Almost. The papers were supposed to be signed tomorrow. That signature had destroyed me the first time. I smiled, and Ethan didn't like it. "You should call the board," I said. His expression changed for less than a second. That was all I needed. "What? Call the board? Why?" "Because tomorrow's special resolution meeting is cancelled." Olivia stared at me, her mouth slightly open. Ethan became very still. I continued, "The voting proxy transfer is cancelled. So is the Sterling Meridian strategic merger, effective immediately. Your administrative access to the founder's office is suspended pending a conflict review." "You're joking." "No. You can't suspend me because of your relationship problem. I'm not. I held up my phone. You used a corporate account to book this room. The color drained from his face. Olivia looked at him, confusion turning into something sharper. I remembered that detail because it had appeared 6 years later in a discovery file, a detail my first life attorneys had called irrelevant by then. The room had been charged to Meridian's executive hospitality account. Ethan had later deleted the record. But tonight, the charge still existed. Ethan tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. It's a hotel room. Yes, I nodded. Booked during working hours using a corporate account while you were conducting undisclosed private meetings with the daughter of the principal shareholder of a company currently negotiating a merger with us. Olivia's eyes narrowed. Do not drag my family into this. I'm not dragging anyone anywhere. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. I'm separating my business from your family before you get the chance to mix them. Ethan stared at me as if he were trying to decide whether I was bluffing. He had always been good at reading weakness, that was one of the reasons he had controlled me for so long. He knew exactly when I would sacrifice profit for loyalty. Exactly when I would forgive an insult to protect a friendship. Exactly when I would sign a bad agreement because Olivia asked me to. What Ethan had never met was the version of me who had already paid for those choices. Adrian, Olivia said, quieter now, you love me. The words struck harder than I expected, not because I wanted her back, but because I remembered how completely that sentence had once controlled me. I had loved her, that had been true. It had simply never made betrayal acceptable. I did. Her face tightened. You still do. Maybe. That answer surprised her, and it surprised me too. I looked at the woman I had planned to marry 11 days from now, a woman I had loved for 8 years. A woman whose approval had once felt like sunlight. Feelings did not disappear because time reversed, but death had burned away the illusion that love was a debt I owed forever. I can love someone, I said, and still refuse to let them destroy me. For the first time, Olivia had no answer. I walked past them, and she grabbed my wrist. Where are you going? Home. You can't just leave me here. I looked at Ethan. You're not alone. Then I pulled my wrist free and walked toward the elevator. Behind me, Olivia called my name, once, twice, the third time she sounded angry. I kept walking. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside, and when the doors closed between us, my knees nearly gave out. I caught the brass rail, my chest hurt, my hands were shaking. For one terrifying second, I thought the rebirth itself had been some hallucination produced by brain damage. I pulled out my phone and checked the date. May 14th, 7 years before my death, 11 days before my wedding, 1 day before I signed away practical control of the company I had built. 3 weeks before Ethan persuaded me to approve the Harbor Crown acquisition. 4 months before Meridian assumed nearly $200 million in hidden environmental liabilities. 2 years before Olivia's father used our debt crisis to demand preferred voting rights. 3 years before I was removed as CEO. 4 years before the fraud investigation. 5 years before Sophia died. 6 years before I went to prison. 7 years before Ethan killed me. I remembered every major disaster. I did not remember every stock price. I did not know every conversation that had happened behind my back. I did not possess some magical map of the future. But I knew where my own mistakes had begun, and the first mistake had been refusing to walk away tonight. The elevator reached the underground garage. My phone started vibrating. Olivia. I declined. She called again, declined. A third time, I blocked the number. The instant I did, a ridiculous pressure lifted from my chest, not all of it, but enough to breathe. I started toward my car, then stopped. There was one person I needed to see. I searched my contacts, Sophia Hart. Her name was still there. Of course it was. I had not spoken to her in 4 months in my first life. That silence had eventually stretched into almost a year, not because she had done anything wrong, but because Olivia disliked her. Sophia and I had met at 19. We built our first software prototype. Together in a university basement using 2 borrowed laptops and a server that overheated every 40 minutes. I handled operations and sales. Sophia designed the forecasting engine that made our logistics software worth buying. When I founded Meridian after graduation, she was the first person I asked to join. She refused, not because she didn't believe in me, but because she wanted to build something of her own. Partnership doesn't require ownership, she had told me. 3 years later, Hart Infrastructure Analytics became one of the most respected risk modeling firms in the city. And somewhere between university and adulthood, she had fallen in love with me. I had known. Everyone had known. Sophia never made it dramatic. She never tried to sabotage Olivia. She never demanded that I choose. On my 22nd birthday, standing beside the river after everyone else had gone home, she told me once, "I love you, Adrian. I don't expect anything from you, but I refuse to lie about it." I told her I loved Olivia. Sophia smiled and said, "I know." Then she stayed my friend for 10 years, not waiting by a window, not putting her life on hold. She built a company, bought an apartment, ran marathons. Buried her father, supported her mother, turned down people she did not love, and dated a few she thought she might. But whenever our lives crossed, there was something in her eyes she never managed to hide. In my first life, she had waited 10 years for me to realize what I was throwing away. I never did. Not until it was too late. My finger hovered over her name. Then I stopped. Calling Sophia immediately after catching Olivia in a hotel room would make her exactly what she had never deserved to be. A rebound, a weapon, proof that I could replace someone. I put my phone away. First, I had to fix my life. Then, if Sophia still wanted me in hers, I would earn the right to ask. I drove to Meridian headquarters. It was nearly midnight when I arrived. The security guard straightened and said, "Mr. Mercer, evening." "Tom." He looked surprised that I remembered his name. In my first life, Tom Reyes had testified that Ethan's assistant entered the executive floor at 3 in the morning the week before my accounts were altered. No one had believed him. I had barely known him. Tonight, I knew better. "Is the legal department still upstairs?" "Ms. Price is in." I took the elevator to the 32nd floor. Rachel Price was sitting alone in the conference room surrounded by merger documents. She looked up when I entered. "Adrian." Rachel had been Meridian's general counsel for 8 months, brilliant. Impatient, unimpressed by everyone. In my first life, she resigned 6 months after the Harbor Crown acquisition because I overruled her objections. At the time, I had thought she was being difficult. Years later, I learned every warning she gave me had been correct. She glanced at the clock. "It's midnight." "I know. You're getting married in 11 days. "Not anymore." She slowly removed her glasses. "What happened?" "Ethan is sleeping with Olivia." Rachel stared at me, then closed the contract in front of her. "How sure are you?" "I saw them." "That qualifies." I canceled the wedding. One eyebrow rose. That was fast. It was 7 years late. She frowned, but I moved before she could ask what I meant. "I need you to suspend tomorrow's proxy transfer." Her expression changed immediately. "That's more complicated." "No, the agreement hasn't been executed. The board package has been distributed." "Distribution isn't execution." "Correct." "Then pull it." Rachel studied me. "You fought me for 3 weeks when I said that transfer gave Ethan too much control." "I was wrong." She leaned back. "You told me I was being paranoid." "You were right. You said Ethan was family." "He isn't." "You told me Olivia's father would never use preferred shares against you." "I was wrong about that too." Rachel stared at me for several seconds. "Did somebody hit you on the head?" "Something like that." "What changed?" I finally understood that trusting someone and surrendering control to them are not the same thing. That answer seemed to satisfy her. She reopened her laptop. "What exactly do you want?" "Freeze the Sterling merger negotiations. Suspend Ethan's access to founder-level files pending a formal conflict review. Preserve all executive expense records from the last 12 months. Preserve all access logs related to the Harbor Crown acquisition." Her fingers stopped over the keyboard. "Harbor Crown?" "Yes. We haven't even received the final diligence package." "I know. Why preserve it?" "Because I want an independent forensic review before we bid." Rachel's eyes sharpened. "Do you know something?" "I know enough to be uncomfortable." That was true. In my previous life, Harbor Crown had looked like a brilliant acquisition. A waterfront redevelopment company with valuable permits, strong municipal relationships, and a portfolio of half-completed properties. Ethan had pushed hard to buy it, Olivia's father had offered financing, the board called it transformational. What none of us knew until much later was that 3 of Harbor Crown sites sat over contaminated industrial land. The seller knew, Ethan knew, Sterling Capital knew. I had been the convenient idiot whose signature placed the liability inside Meridian. But this time, I couldn't accuse them based on memories from a life no one else had lived. I needed proof. Rachel tapped the table. Preservation I can do. Access suspension requires cause. Corporate money paid for Ethan's hotel room tonight. Her mouth flattened. With Olivia? Yes. During merger negotiations? Yes. That is enough for a temporary administrative hold. Do it. She looked at me for another moment. Adrian? Yes. If you're doing this because you're angry, stop now. I'm angry, that wasn't the question. I know. I sat across from her. I'm not asking you to punish Ethan. I'm asking you to protect the company from a conflict I should have addressed months ago. Rachel nodded once. Good answer. For the next 2 hours, we rebuilt the wall I had spent years tearing down around myself. Access logs preserved, corporate cards temporarily frozen, board notices drafted, document retention activated. At 2:17 in the morning, Ethan called. I answered. Restore my access. No. This is insane. Rachel will send you the review notice. You can't freeze an officer because you caught him kissing your fiancée. I froze you because you used company resources while privately meeting a counterparty to an active merger negotiation. That's a technicality. So is a signature. Silence. I smiled without humor. Funny how important technicalities become when ownership is involved. His voice changed. Listen to me carefully. If you walk into tomorrow's board meeting with some emotional revenge fantasy, you will embarrass yourself. There is no board meeting tomorrow. Adrian. I cancelled it. You don't have unilateral authority. As founder and holder of 58% of Class A voting rights, I absolutely do. You agreed to transfer 12% into the executive pool. Agreed to consider it. You signed the preliminary memorandum. Non-binding. Silence again. Ethan knew corporate documents better than most lawyers. He knew I was right. That was when I felt the first true shift in the timeline. In my previous life, I had never forced Ethan to react. He had always known what I would do. Now he didn't. You're making a mistake, he said. I've made several. I ended the call. By sunrise, I had slept 40 minutes on the office couch. Rachel left to shower and returned for the 9 o'clock executive meeting. I stood in my office looking across the city when the door opened. My mother walked in. I turned. How did you get past security? Your assistant likes me. Margaret Mercer was 61, elegant, sharp, and one of the few people in my life who had openly disliked my engagement. She looked at the suit I had slept in. Your wedding planner called me. That was fast. Olivia's mother called me faster. Then your aunt called me, which means the entire city knows. Probably. She studied my face. What happened? Olivia and Ethan. My mother closed her eyes, not surprise, recognition. When she opened them, she only asked, Did you see it yourself? Yes. And I ended it. She walked closer. No negotiating? No. No taking responsibility for being too busy? I winced. She noticed. You were going to? Once. Adrian. I didn't. She touched my cheek. You look different. If only she knew, in my first life, my mother had died 18 months before my trial. Cancer. I spent the final 6 months of her life fighting to keep Meridian afloat. I missed 2 chemotherapy appointments because Olivia insisted the merger crisis was more important. I missed my mother's final lucid afternoon because Ethan called an emergency board meeting. When I arrived at the hospital, she no longer knew my name. I had carried that regret into prison and into death. I pulled her into a hug. She stiffened, then hugged me back. Well, she murmured, this is dramatic. I laughed, for the first time since waking up. I'm having breakfast with you. Crisis? I have 30 minutes. Wasn't enough. I used to be stupid. Did canceling a wedding cure you? No. Damn. I smiled. Then my phone lit up with 32 missed calls. Olivia, Ethan, Olivia's mother, Olivia's father, 3 board members, 2 reporters, and 1 message from a number I knew by heart. Sophia. I opened it. I heard about the wedding. Not to ask questions. I just want to know whether you're safe. 10 years, that was how Sophia loved. Not where are you? Not what did she do? Not I told you so. Are you safe? I typed 3 words, I am now. Then I put the phone down and took my mother to breakfast. At 9 o'clock, the executive conference room was full. Ethan arrived last. His access badge had apparently failed at the lobby, forcing security to escort him upstairs. He was furious. Good. Angry people made mistakes. Rachel sat on my right, Chief Financial Officer Daniel Shaw sat on my left. Across from me were the division heads. Ethan dropped a folder on the table. This review is retaliation. Rachel answered before I did. If you want to make that claim formally, I'll record it. He ignored her. Adrian, restore my access. No. He looked around the table. You all know what's happening, right? Our CEO caught me with Olivia last night and decided to shut down a $200 million merger because his feelings are hurt. Several faces shifted. I let him finish. Silence made insecure people speak longer than they should. Ethan continued, Harbor Crown is the most important acquisition this company has ever considered. Sterling Capital's financing package expires Friday. If we delay, we lose the deal. Then we lose it, I said. He stared at me. Daniel cleared his throat. Adrian, that's a significant decision. I know. May I ask why? I slid a thin document toward him. Page 4. He read, his brows drawing together. Environmental indemnification. Notice the amendment date 3 weeks ago. Notice who approved removing the seller's 10-year survival obligation. Daniel looked at Ethan. The room changed. Ethan barely reacted. That amendment came through council. Rachel shook her head. Not ours, Harbor Crown's. Which means we should have reviewed it. We were going to after signing the financing commitment. Ethan's jaw tightened. I spoke, I want full diligence on all Harbor Crown sites, soil history, industrial permits, environmental claims, subsidiary transfers, insurance exclusions. Ethan leaned forward. That could take months. Then it takes months. We lose the deal. Then we lose the deal. You're afraid. Yes. That surprised him. I am afraid of signing liabilities I haven't examined because someone I trusted told me not to look too closely. His face hardened. We've done 15 deals together and now we're checking the 16th? He understood the message. So did everyone else. The meeting ended 40 minutes later. By noon, 3 things happened. Sterling Capital withdrew its financing offer. Ethan's attorney accused Meridian of retaliatory conduct. And Harbor Crown announced that another buyer had entered exclusive negotiations. In my previous life, I would have panicked. This time, I smiled. The other buyer was Northbridge Urban Partners. They had been the backup target in the first timeline. They would sign within 11 days. 6 months later, the contamination would become public. Northbridge would lose nearly half its market value. I did not celebrate. People would lose jobs, investors who knew nothing about the fraud would suffer. So I called their CEO. Martin, it's Adrian Mercer. His voice was cautious. Heard you've had an interesting 24 hours. I have. If this is about Harbor Crown, we're under exclusivity. It is. Then I can't discuss terms. I'm not asking you to. I paused. I'm telling you to expand your environmental diligence. Silence. Why? Because I found an indemnity amendment I didn't like. That's it? That's enough. Are you trying to scare me out of the deal? No. Then why warn me? Because in my first life, your company collapsed and one of your executives killed himself. I couldn't say that, so I said, if I'm wrong, you've wasted a week. If I'm right, you've saved your company. Martin was silent for a long time. I'll look. Good. I hung up. The future shifted again. By evening, Northbridge suspended negotiations. Harbor Crown's board called an emergency meeting. The next morning, a local financial paper ran a story asking why 2 major bidders had suddenly demanded expanded environmental reviews. Regulators noticed. Ethan noticed too. He came into my office without knocking. You called Northbridge? Yes. Why? I didn't want innocent people holding a bomb. His eyes narrowed. What bomb? There it was, too fast, too sharp. I leaned back. I didn't say there was one. You implied it. I said I wanted better diligence. You knew Martin was bidding, everyone in the market knew. You knew exactly what to tell him. Environmental indemnities aren't subtle. Ethan studied me. For the first time, I saw fear underneath the anger, not fear that I was stronger, but fear that I knew something I should not know. He sat down. What's going on with you? I got tired. Of what? Being useful to people who mistake usefulness for weakness. He scoffed. So now you're going to burn every relationship you have? No. Olivia thinks you're having some kind of breakdown. Olivia should focus on finding a new venue for whatever she does next. She loves you. I stared at him. He had slept with my fiancée and now wanted to lecture me about her love. The arrogance would have stunned the old me. The new me recognized it as a tactic. Ethan needed Olivia and me reconciled. My relationship with her had been the bridge through which sterling influence entered Meridian. Without it, he lost both his political protection and the financing structure he needed for Harbor Crown. You should marry her, I said. His expression flickered. What? You clearly care about her. Don't be childish. I'm serious. You're engaged to her. Not anymore. He leaned forward. This is exactly what I mean. You're throwing away 8 years because you walked into one bad moment. I threw away 8 years the first time. What does that mean? Nothing you need to worry about. He stood. I don't know what game you're playing. Neither do I. That was partly true. The past had already begun changing. Northbridge had not bought Harbor Crown. That never happened before. The regulatory investigation would now begin earlier. Sterling Capital would adapt. Ethan would adapt. From this point forward, my memories were warnings, not instructions. I had to become good enough to win without them. That afternoon, I finally called Sophia. She answered on the second ring. Hi. One word, no dramatic emotion. But I had spent enough years remembering her voice to hear what she hid. Do you have dinner plans? Yes. My heart sank, then she added, with myself? I laughed. So technically, yes. I won't interrupt. You already did. I can call later. Adrian. Yeah. Do you actually want to see me? There was no easy answer, not if I wanted to treat her differently this time. Yes. Why? Because I owe you several apologies. That's a terrible dinner invitation. I also need an independent infrastructure risk audit. She went silent, then laughed. Somehow, that's worse. Probably. What are you auditing? Harbor Crown. This time her silence changed. That's interesting. Why? My firm reviewed one of their older municipal filings last year. My pulse quickened. What did you find? Not enough to accuse anyone of anything. That's exactly the kind of answer I need. You're serious. Completely. She sighed. Come to my office at 7, not dinner. We'll see whether you still deserve food after the meeting. Heart Analytics occupied 6 floors of a renovated brick warehouse overlooking the river. I had not entered the building in 3 years in my first life. The next time I came here, it had been after Sophia's funeral, her employees packing files into storage boxes, a small photograph of us at 20 sitting on her desk. I had taken it, it was still in my wallet when I died. Now the receptionist smiled and said, Mr. Mercer, she's waiting. Alive. Sophia was alive. That thought hit me harder than expected. I walked into her office. She stood behind a desk covered with engineering reports, dark hair tied loosely behind her head. White shirt with sleeves rolled to her elbows. No dramatic entrance, no impossible beauty that erased every other woman in the room. Just Sophia, the person I had known half my life, the person I had somehow never learned to see clearly enough. She looked at me for several seconds. You look terrible. I laughed. I've had better weeks. It's Wednesday. Exactly. She pointed at the chair. Sit. I did. She remained standing. Before you apologize, I need one answer. Okay. Did Olivia cheat on you? Yes. Her face tightened, but she didn't look pleased. With Ethan? Yes. Damn. That was more sympathy than I expected. I never wanted to be right about her. I know. Do you? The question hurt. She sat across from me. For years, every time I raised a concern, you treated it like jealousy. Sometimes it was. Of course it was. I blinked. She shrugged. I loved you, I wasn't a saint. But being jealous didn't automatically make me wrong. I know that now. Do you? Yes. Then say what you're apologizing for. I took a breath. For treating your concern like manipulation. For disappearing whenever Olivia was uncomfortable with us being friends. For asking you to help Meridian whenever I needed your expertise, and then pretending our history didn't exist when you needed honesty from me. Her eyes softened slightly. I continued, and for knowing how you felt while still accepting more from you than I was willing to give. That one landed. Sophia looked down. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. I let you, that doesn't make it fair. No. I am sorry. She nodded. I accept the apology. Relief moved through me. Then she added, that doesn't mean everything goes back to normal. I don't want it to. Her eyes lifted. What do you want? There were 100 answers I could have given, most would have been selfish. So I chose the one I could defend. I want Heart Analytics to lead an independent review of Meridian's acquisition pipeline. Business? Yes. Nothing else? Not until I can tell the difference between choosing something and running away from something. For a second, Sophia simply looked at me. Then a small smile appeared. That's the first intelligent thing you've said to me in years. I've had a difficult educational experience. So I heard. She opened a file. Harbor Crown. We worked until nearly midnight. Sophia's team had examined transport access around one of Harbor Crown's waterfront sites 18 months earlier. They had never been hired for environmental diligence, but the modeling had shown unusually high remediation cost assumptions hidden inside a subsidiary's projected maintenance budget. See this, Sophia said, turning her monitor toward me. A cluster of figures filled the screen. They categorized soil remediation as phased infrastructure stabilization. Meaning? Meaning someone didn't want investors seeing the word contamination. My pulse accelerated. Can you prove it? Not from this. What would you need? Original industrial land records, groundwater studies, waste permits. Can we obtain them legally? Some are public. Others require seller disclosure. We've already requested disclosure. Then compare what they sent you against municipal records. That was how we started, not with revenge, with work. For the next 3 weeks, my life narrowed into 3 things: Meridian, evidence, and repairing the parts of myself I had spent years neglecting. I ate breakfast with my mother twice a week. I slept more than 4 hours. I stopped checking Olivia's social media. I removed Ethan from operational control but kept him employed while the conflict review proceeded. That last decision irritated Rachel. You know he's working against you. I suspect it. That's lawyer language from someone who isn't a lawyer. I need evidence. So suspend him. If I suspend him too early, he becomes careful. Rachel stared at me. You scare me now. I'll take that as professional approval. It worked. Ethan did exactly what I expected. He began building a coalition, not openly, that would have been too obvious. Instead, he told senior managers that I had become unstable after the breakup. He suggested that my rejection of Harbor Crown had cost Meridian its best growth opportunity. He privately contacted 2 directors. He spoke with Sterling Capital. And because I had changed the timeline, he moved much faster than he had before. In my first life, Ethan spent almost 3 years isolating me. This time, he tried it in 3 months. I nearly missed him, not because I trusted him, but because I assumed he would reuse the methods I remembered. He didn't. The first attack came through our lenders. I was in Sophia's office when Daniel called. Adrian, we have a problem. What kind? Redwood Bank froze the expansion facility. I stood. Why? They received an anonymous compliance notice claiming Meridian's revenue recognition is fraudulent. I felt cold. That had never happened before. How serious? Serious enough for them to suspend draws. Cash position? Operating cash is fine for 7 weeks. Construction commitments become painful after that. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Sophia watched me put on my jacket. What happened? Credit freeze. Why? Someone accused us of accounting fraud. She stood too. Do you have accounting fraud? No. Then why do you look worried? Because proving innocence can bankrupt you faster than committing the crime. She reached for her coat. I'm coming. This is Meridian, and Hart has $12 million in outstanding contracts with Meridian. A liquidity event affects me. I looked at her. She raised an eyebrow. Don't romanticize competence, Adrian. I'm protecting my company. I wasn't going to. You were. Maybe a little. Stop. That was Sophia. Even when I wanted to turn her into salvation, she refused. At Meridian, we found the problem. Someone had sent Redwood a package containing altered versions of 3 long-term service contracts. The false copies made it appear that Meridian had recognized revenue before performance obligations were met. The originals proved otherwise, but the altered documents contained my digital approval stamp. Rachel swore when she saw them. Daniel went pale. These are good, too good, Sophia said. Everyone looked at her. She pointed to a metadata line. This formatting engine wasn't used by Meridian when these contracts were created. Daniel leaned closer. How do you know? Our firm uses the same document suite. Version 12 didn't support embedded audit markers like this. Rachel's eyes narrowed. Version 12 was introduced 9 months ago. The contracts are 18 months old. I looked at the document. There it was, the first real problem I had never encountered in my original life. My memories gave me nothing, no future answer, no name, no secret location, just a room full of people waiting for me to decide. In my first life, this was where I would have panicked, then called Ethan. The irony nearly made me laugh. Instead, I asked who had access to the originals. Daniel answered, finance, legal, executive operations. How many people? 32. Too many. Rachel said, we can subpoena records if litigation begins. Too slow. Sophia tapped the table. Not necessarily. I looked at her. The forged files came from somewhere. Whoever made them may have stripped most metadata. But they probably didn't rebuild every embedded element. What are you thinking? Printer profiles, font licensing, revision libraries, template identifiers. Daniel frowned. You can trace that? Maybe. How long? Sophia looked at me. 48 hours if my digital forensics team drops everything. Do it. She didn't move. Price. I almost smiled. Send me the invoice. Good answer. 41 hours later, we had a lead. The altered contracts had been created on software registered to a consultancy called Westlake Strategic. I recognized the name not from my previous trial, but from an invoice Rachel had preserved the night of my rebirth. Westlake had received $80,000 in market advisory fees from Ethan's executive budget. We still couldn't prove Ethan ordered the forgery, but the chain existed. So instead of confronting him, I called a special board meeting. Ethan arrived confident. He had spent 2 days telling directors I was about to lose the company. I let him speak first. We need leadership stability, he said. Redwood's action proves the market has lost confidence. One director nodded, another avoided my eyes. Ethan continued, whatever personal disagreements Adrian and I have, this company cannot become collateral damage. I almost admired him. He sounded reasonable, concerned, loyal. That was why he had fooled me. Then Rachel distributed the forensic report. Ethan stopped smiling. I did not accuse him, I simply said, Westlake Strategic received payments authorized by your office. They advise me on market positioning. Then you won't mind providing the scope of work? Of course not. Good. Rachel slid another document toward him. We requested it this morning. He looked down. They couldn't produce one. Ethan's expression remained controlled. Then their administration is sloppy. Perhaps. I folded my hands. We have also asked Redwood to provide the original anonymous submission package to independent investigators. His eyes met mine, fear again. I continued, until the investigation concludes, Ethan Blake is suspended from operational duties with pay. He stood. This is a setup. No, you've been planning this since the hotel. I started protecting the company since the hotel. Same thing. It isn't. He looked at the directors. You see this, right? He rejected Harbor Crown, destroyed the Sterling relationship, froze our credit line, and now he is removing anyone who challenges him. Director Paul Vance shifted. Adrian, there is a governance concern. There would be. Ethan had been working on him. I nodded. Then vote. Ethan turned toward me. What? You want me removed? The room went still. Call the vote. Rachel looked at me sharply. This was risky. I knew it, but I also knew something Ethan did not. The founder voting proxy had never transferred. I still held 58% of Class A voting rights. I could technically survive the challenge. More importantly, I wanted everyone on record. Ethan stared at me. You think controlling shares makes you untouchable? No, I think it makes me responsible. I pushed a sheet toward the center. If the board believes I have breached my fiduciary duty, vote to open an independent leadership review. Paul Vance raised his hand. 2 others followed, 3 out of 9. Not enough. Ethan looked at the other directors, no one moved. The coalition he thought he had built was smaller than he believed. I nodded. Motion fails. Then I looked at Paul. Thank you for making your position clear. His face changed. I didn't threaten him, I didn't need to. Transparency was enough. Ethan left without another word. 2 days later, Redwood restored 70% of our credit line. A week later, investigators confirmed the forged contracts originated from Westlake. The consultancy's founder refused to answer questions. That was not enough to end Ethan. But it was enough to end his power inside Meridian. Olivia called me from a new number that night. I almost declined, then I answered. What? That's how you answer me now? Yes. She was quiet. I need to see you. No. Adrian. What do you need? I said I need to see you. And I said no. She exhaled sharply. Ethan has been suspended. Correct. My father says Sterling Capital may lose its Harbor Crown position because of the investigation. That sounds like a Sterling problem. You're enjoying this. No. You expect me to believe that? I expect you not to enjoy it. That was true, but I don't. Harbor Crown's contamination had become public 3 days earlier. Regulators raided 2 offices. Northbridge had escaped the acquisition because of my warning. Sterling Capital, however, had already provided a bridge loan through one of its affiliates. They were exposed, not fatally, but badly. Olivia's voice softened. I made a mistake. I closed my eyes. In my previous life, I had waited years to hear those words. They meant almost nothing now. Which one? Don't do that. Do what? Turn everything into a weapon. I'm asking a question. You know what I'm talking about, the hotel. Silence. Yes. You made several decisions before we reached the hotel. It wasn't an affair. Does that distinction help you? Ethan and I were confused. Then you're lucky you have time to become certain. Adrian. I could hear tears now. The old version of me would already have been halfway to her apartment. I stayed seated at my desk. You canceled 8 years in one night. No. I looked at the city through the glass. You canceled it slowly. I only stopped pretending. Did Sophia have something to do with this? There it was, of course. No. You're seeing her. I'm working with her. You're always with her. I'm often with the independent risk consultant investigating a company-wide fraud attempt. Olivia laughed bitterly. She waited 10 years for this. My hand tightened around the phone. Don't talk about her. Why? Because it's true? Because she isn't responsible for what you did. She always wanted you, but she never betrayed me to get you. Olivia went silent. I continued, that's the difference. I ended the call. For several minutes, I sat alone. Then a knock came at my office door. Sophia entered carrying 2 boxes of food. I brought noodles. I looked at the phone in my hand. Olivia. How did you know? You have the expression you make when you want to throw expensive technology through a window. I have an expression for that. Several. She set the food down. Do you want to talk? No. Good. She handed me chopsticks. I didn't want to hear about it. I laughed. We ate in silence. Halfway through the meal, I looked at her. Olivia said you waited 10 years for this. Sophia stopped eating. I immediately regretted bringing it up. Sorry. No. She put down her chopsticks. Maybe we should talk about that. I nodded. Sophia looked at her hands. I loved you for 10 years. The sentence was simple, no performance, no attempt to make me responsible. Past tense. I asked, and? She looked up. Don't get hopeful. I smiled, she didn't. I need you to understand something, Adrian. I did wait. In some ways, there was always a door in me I didn't close. I know. No, you don't. She leaned back. I didn't spend 10 years preserving myself for you. I had a life. I dated, I worked, I traveled. I tried to move on more than once. I know. I wasn't a tragic woman standing in the rain while you loved someone else. I never thought you were. Good. Her eyes held mine. Because if anything ever happens between us, I will not be your reward for finally leaving Olivia. The words cut through every romantic fantasy I had allowed myself, and they were exactly what I needed. You won't be. Can you promise that? Not yet. She nodded. Then we're not ready. No. I felt strangely relieved. She picked up her chopsticks again. Good, you're learning. Months passed. The future changed faster than I could track. Harbor Crown filed for bankruptcy. Sterling Capital survived, but Olivia's father lost his position as managing partner after the fund's investment committee discovered undisclosed bridge exposure. Ethan resigned from Meridian before our investigation concluded. He joined a private investment firm backed by 3 former Meridian directors. In my original life, that firm had never existed. That frightened me more than anything. My enemy had adapted, so had I. Without Harbor Crown's debt, Meridian had cash. Without Sterling's financing conditions, we had freedom. I used both to pursue a project I had ignored in my first life, distributed freight optimization. Not glamorous, not the type of project financial magazines put on covers. But Sophia's model showed enormous waste in regional transport networks, empty return routes, poor warehouse coordination, energy inefficiencies, municipal bottlenecks. We formed a joint venture between Meridian and Heart Analytics. Equal governance, separate ownership, no hidden control. When I suggested Meridian take 60% because we were providing more capital, Sophia refused. Then provide less capital, we're assuming more risk. Financially, no. Reputationally, yes. I stared at her, she stared back. I smiled. 50-50. Now you're getting it. The project became profitable in 9 months, then very profitable, not because I knew the future. In my first life, I had never built it. This was ours, something that existed only because I changed. That mattered more than exploiting some remembered stock move ever could. I trained differently too, not martial arts. Not some overnight transformation, but decision-making, delegation, financial structure, negotiation. I forced myself to stop being the person who solved every problem by absorbing it. When a manager failed, I didn't cover for them. When a client threatened to leave unless we made an unsafe promise, I let them leave. When investors wanted founder guarantees, I refused. Meridian became smaller for a while, then stronger. My mother told me I laughed more. Rachel told me I had become less unbearable. Daniel called that a major promotion. Sophia said nothing, she simply kept showing up. 1 year after my rebirth, we were standing on the roof of a regional logistics center when she handed me a tablet. Quarterly model. I glanced at it, 17% efficiency improvement. 16.8, I round emotionally. That's why I handle numbers. I looked at her. Wind pulled loose strands of hair across her face. She had spent the morning arguing with contractors and the afternoon presenting infrastructure projections to a room full of mayors. She looked tired, happy, and entirely herself. Something inside me became quiet. I had spent a year asking whether I loved Sophia because she had saved me in another life. The answer had changed slowly. At first, gratitude and grief had been tangled with everything I felt. Then months passed, I disagreed with her, got angry with her, watched her be wrong, watched her admit it, watched her challenge me, watched her choose her company over mine when our interests conflicted, watched her refuse to make my life the center of hers. And somewhere in all of that, I stopped seeing the woman from my previous life's memories. I saw the woman beside me, Sophia. She continued reviewing the numbers. Emma. Would you have dinner with me? We have dinner constantly. A date. Her fingers stopped. For several seconds, she didn't look at me. Then she locked the tablet. Why now? Because I don't want Olivia back. That's a low bar. Because I don't need you to rescue me. Better. Because I know what my life looks like without you. Her eyes softened, but I continued before she could misunderstand. And I don't mean the other life. She frowned slightly. I had never told anyone about rebirth. I wasn't ready to, maybe I never would be. So I chose the truth I could explain. I mean, this year, when you're gone for a week, I miss you. When something goes well, you're the person I want to tell. When we disagree, I don't feel threatened, I feel challenged. You make my life larger, not safer. Sophia stared at me. That was almost good, almost. You ruined it with the phrase, make my life larger. I was under pressure. She smiled, then the smile faded. One date won. Earned the second. I negotiated billion-dollar contracts more easily than this. That's why your love life was a disaster. Our first date lasted 4 hours, our second lasted 6. The third ended with her kissing me beside my car and then saying, "Don't look so shocked." I waited 10 years. I know, I thought I'd be more prepared. She laughed. You wasted your preparation on the wrong woman. For the first time, the sentence did not hurt. Then Ethan returned, not personally, professionally. The attack began with a hostile tender offer. His new firm, Blackridge Partners, announced it had acquired 14% of Meridian's public float and intended to seek board representation. That was legal, aggressive, but legal. Then 2 institutional investors joined him. Suddenly Blackridge controlled enough voting power to pressure my board. In my first life, Ethan had stolen Meridian through internal trust. This time, he intended to take it from the outside. Rachel walked into my office carrying the tender documents. He's coming for you. I know. Do you? She dropped the papers on my desk. Blackridge isn't using sterling money. Whose? We don't know. That worried me. Foreign? Could be pension capital, private family offices. What do they want? Meridian. No, they offered a 31% premium. That isn't the question. Rachel sat. Then what do you think they want? I looked at the joint venture map on my wall. Meridian's distributed freight network now handled nearly 12% of regional commercial routing, not dominant, but important. Data mattered, routes mattered, municipal contracts mattered. Blackridge wasn't buying a software company, they were buying access, network control. Rachel followed my eyes. That would trigger public infrastructure reviews unless they split the assets after acquisition. Her expression hardened. I hate it when you do that. Do what? Think like Ethan. I learned from experience. The board wanted the premium, I understood why. Their duty was not to protect my feelings. If Blackridge's offer was good for shareholders, I had to provide a stronger alternative than simply refusing. So I did something the old Adrian would never have done, I considered selling. Not because I wanted to lose, but because ownership was no longer my identity. That terrified Ethan at the shareholder meeting. He approached me during a break. You look relaxed. I slept well. You should be fighting. I am. You've barely spoken. The numbers are doing it for me. His smile tightened. You know the board wants the offer. I know. Then you lose. Maybe. That answer unsettled him. He stepped closer. This company is your entire life. Not anymore. For the first time since the hotel corridor, Ethan looked genuinely confused. He had built his entire strategy around the man I used to be, a man who would sacrifice anything to keep Meridian. A man who would sign bad financing, beg disloyal partners, destroy his health, ignore his mother, lose Sophia, all to protect a company he had confused with himself. That man was dead, literally. If Blackridge wants Meridian badly enough, I said, they can pay for it. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. No. You would sell? At the right price. You'd walk away? Absolutely. His face told me more than any document, he could not afford for me to accept. That meant the acquisition itself was not his end goal, control was. And there was something inside Meridian he needed intact. I told Rachel to reject nothing, invite them to improve the offer. She stared at me. You want a bidding process? I want Ethan to tell us how badly he needs the company. Blackridge raised its offer. We countered. They raised again. Institutional investors became enthusiastic, Ethan became less careful. When we requested financing disclosures, Blackridge resisted. When we insisted on infrastructure control covenants, they objected. When Sophia proposed separating the joint venture before any sale, Blackridge threatened to withdraw. There it was, they didn't care about Meridian alone. They wanted the Heart Meridian routing. Sophia sat across from me in my kitchen that night. We can terminate the joint venture. That destroys value. Temporarily, your company takes a hit. So does yours. I shook my head. No. She frowned. What? I'm not asking you to damage Heart to save Meridian. I'm proposing it. Still no. Adrian. No. Her eyes narrowed. Don't turn this into one of your martyrdom problems. I'm not. It sounds exactly like one. Then sell me your interest. She stopped. What? At independent valuation, Meridian buys your half, then I can restructure without exposing you. Sophia stared at me. You think I'm afraid of Ethan? No. Then stop trying to put me behind you. That hit harder than expected. She stood. This is what you still do when things get dangerous, you decide that loving people means making decisions for them. I opened my mouth, then stopped. She was right. Again. I don't need protection from every consequence, she said. I need information and the freedom to choose. I leaned back. Okay, you're right. She seemed almost disappointed that the argument ended so fast. I smiled. I'm evolving. Annoying. What's your choice? We restructure together. How? Open the network standards. I stared at her. That was radical. Our routing algorithms were valuable because access was controlled. If we opened interoperability standards to competitors and municipalities, Blackridge could no longer monopolize the system by purchasing us. Our short-term valuation would fall, but our long-term platform influence might grow. Or competitors could copy us and crush our margins. You've been thinking about this for 6 months and never told me. You would have said no. I might still. I know. I walked to the window. In my first life, I tried to own everything. I feared losing Olivia, Meridian, control, reputation. The harder I held, the more I gave other people the power to destroy me. Now Sophia was asking me to loosen my grip on the most valuable thing we had built, not because she knew the future, but because she believed openness was stronger than control. I turned. Run the downside model. Already did. Of course you did. She slid her tablet toward me. Worst case, revenue drops 22% over 18 months. Best case, adoption triples. Median case, we lose short-term exclusivity but become the standard architecture across 5 regions. I looked at her. You think this kills Blackridge's thesis? I think it kills anyone's ability to buy the network and close the doors. And if we're wrong? We build the next thing. That was the moment I understood why Sophia had succeeded without me and why I wanted her beside me. Not behind me, not waiting for me, beside me. Do it, I said. We announced the open standard transition 48 hours later. Meridian stock fell 11%. Financial television called it reckless. 2 directors resigned. Blackridge withdrew its tender offer. Then the Real story broke. The capital behind Blackridge included a consortium of industrial operators that had planned to use our routing access to prioritize affiliated freight networks. Not necessarily illegal, but politically toxic. Municipal partners demanded reviews. One of Blackridge's investors withdrew, another sued. And during discovery, investigators obtained internal communications tying Ethan to Westlake Strategic, the consultancy that had forged our contracts a year earlier. Rachel came into my office with a document packet. We have him. I read the email slowly. Ethan had not personally created the forged files, he had ordered Westlake to generate pressure around Mercer's governance failures. Ambiguous language. But another email was not, use the attached historical contract templates. The goal is to force a lender review before the board challenge. His name was at the bottom, Ethan Blake. I felt almost nothing, no triumph, no rage, only closure. What happens now? I asked. Criminal referral for document fraud is possible. Civil claims are certain. Securities issues may follow depending on Blackridge disclosures. And Olivia? Rachel hesitated. What about her? Was she involved? We found correspondence. My stomach tightened. Rachel gave me a printed email from Olivia to Ethan sent 2 days after I canceled the wedding. You said Adrian always panics when liquidity is threatened. If the bank pressure forces him to come back to the table, do it. Just don't involve me directly. I read it twice, the second time was easier. Is this enough for charges? Probably not by itself. Then don't stretch it. Rachel studied me. You don't want revenge. I want accuracy. That answer felt like the final difference between the man I had been and the man I had become. I don't want Olivia punished for Ethan's crimes. Rachel nodded. Her email will still be disclosed in civil proceedings. That's a consequence of what she wrote, fine. The investigation lasted 9 months. Ethan was charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, falsification of commercial records, and securities-related offenses connected to Blackridge's disclosures. He fought everything, he had good lawyers. He challenged the evidence, claimed Westlake misunderstood him, insisted the tender offer had been legitimate. Some charges survived, some did not. Reality was less satisfying than revenge fantasies. There was no single courtroom scene where everyone gasped and the villain confessed. There were motions, depositions, delays, negotiations, financial penalties, regulatory findings, years of legal consequences. But the important part happened quickly. Ethan lost control of Blackridge, his partners removed him. His professional licenses were reviewed, his reputation in institutional finance collapsed. Not because I destroyed him, but because evidence made him expensive to trust. Olivia came to see me once during that period. She waited in Meridian's lobby until security called upstairs. I almost refused, then I agreed to 10 minutes. She entered my office wearing a gray coat. She looked older. "So did I thank you for seeing me?" "Sit." She did. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she looked at the photograph on my desk, Sophia and me at the opening of our 3rd regional routing center. "You love her?" "Yes." Olivia nodded slowly. "I thought you'd come back." "I know. 4 months." I said nothing. I kept thinking this was anger. It was at first. And then? And then it wasn't. She looked down. "My father resigned. Sterling Capital is being restructured." "I heard. Ethan says everything is your fault." "That sounds like Ethan." A faint smile touched her mouth and disappeared. "I believed him for a long time." "About what?" "About you." I waited. "He said you were controlling, obsessed with work, that you kept everyone dependent on you so you could feel needed." Some of that was true. I spent years confronting it. Olivia continued. "He said I deserved someone who saw me." "Did he?" She laughed once. "No." Silence settled between us. Then she looked at me. "I am sorry." This time the words were heavier than the first apology, not because I needed them, but because she finally seemed to understand what they meant. "I know I don't get to ask for another chance." "No, I wasn't going to." "Good." She swallowed. "I just need to know if any of it was real." My chest tightened. "Of course it was." Her eyes filled. "You loved me." "Very much." "Then how did you leave so easily?" I thought of the parking garage, prison, my mother's hospital room, Sophia's funeral photograph, a life Olivia would never remember. It wasn't easy. That was all I could give her. She stood at the door and stopped. She really waited 10 years. I looked at the photograph. "Yes." Olivia nodded. "I hope you don't make her wait anymore." Then she left. I never saw her alone again. 6 months later, I asked Sophia to marry me. I did it badly, not because the ring was wrong, the ring was fine. Not because the setting was wrong, there was no setting. I had planned an elaborate dinner on the roof of the university library where we first met. Then a major routing outage hit one of our Western systems. Sophia and I spent 9 hours in an operations center with engineers, municipal coordinators, and enough coffee to violate several health codes. At 2 in the morning, the system stabilized. Everyone cheered. Sophia dropped into a chair beside me. Her hair was a disaster. There was a coffee stain on her sleeve. I looked at her and thought, this is my life. Not the dinners, not the speeches, not the victories. This, problems, work, arguments, laughter, choice. I reached into my laptop bag. Sophia stared at the small box. "No." I froze. "I haven't asked yet." "You are not proposing after a 9-hour infrastructure failure." "I had a better plan." "Use it." "I don't want to." "Adrian." "Sophia." She covered her face. Several engineers nearby suddenly became intensely interested in their screens. I went down on one knee. Sophia looked horrified. "Get up." "No. People are watching." "I survived a hostile takeover." "I will kill you." "Then answer quickly." She was laughing now. I opened the box. I spent most of my adult life thinking love meant proving how much I could endure. Her laughter faded. I was wrong. I looked at her. "You waited for me for 10 years, I will spend the rest of my life making sure waiting is never your role again." Her eyes filled. I continued, "I don't want you behind me. I don't want you rescuing me. I don't want to own what you built, and I don't want you to disappear inside what I built." My voice caught. I just want to choose you every day I get. Sophia wiped at one eye. That was better than the roof speech. There was going to be a roof. I knew it. Is that a yes? You haven't technically asked. I stared at her. She smiled through tears. Make the contract complete, Mr. Mercer. I laughed. Sophia Hart, will you marry me? Yes. The operations center erupted. Sophia pointed at everyone. None of you saw that. They applauded louder. We married 4 months later, small ceremony. My mother in the front row, Rachel arguing with the photographer about contract language in the release form, Daniel crying harder than anyone admitted. No financial press, no merger announcement, no strategic alliance between families, no voting proxies, no corporate guarantees, just vows. When Sophia walked toward me, I remembered another wedding that never happened. I felt no grief, only gratitude that it didn't. At the reception, my mother pulled me aside. You're staring at your wife. I know. It's unsettling. I can stop. Don't. She looked toward Sophia. You nearly missed that. I know. What changed? For a moment, I considered telling her everything, the first life, the prison cell, the courthouse garage, her death, Sophia's death, the impossible second chance. Instead, I looked at my mother alive under warm lights, complaining about champagne, and decided some miracles did not need explanation. I stopped begging people to choose me. She nodded slowly. That'll do it. Years passed. Meridian never became the largest company in the world. I didn't become the richest man alive. No private army appeared at my door, no secret inheritance turned me into someone important overnight. We built, that was enough. The open routing standard spread, competitors joined, municipalities adopted it. Heart Analytics expanded internationally. Meridian evolved from owning a closed network into providing the tools that made the open one work. I stepped down as CEO at 43 and became chairman. Sophia remained CEO of Heart because she loved running it and because she would have laughed me out of the house if I suggested otherwise. Ethan eventually accepted a plea agreement on the fraud-related charges that survived review. He served time, not the rest of his life, not some theatrical sentence designed to satisfy me enough to lose years he could never recover. I understood that kind of consequence better than most. Olivia moved away. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard she built a smaller investment advisory firm and kept her private life private. I never wished her ruin. By then, I no longer needed it. One autumn evening, almost exactly 10 years after my rebirth, Sophia and I returned to the university for a scholarship ceremony. We had funded a program for students building infrastructure technology. Afterward, we walked beside the river, the same place where she had once told me she loved me. Sophia leaned against the railing. Do you remember this spot? Yes. You rejected me here. I made an immature strategic decision. You said, and I quote, I think of you as family. I winced. I was 22. You were an idiot. Accurate. She smiled. I went home and cried for 3 hours. I didn't know that. You weren't supposed to. I'm sorry. I know. She looked across the water. For years, I wondered whether waiting made me pathetic. My chest tightened. You weren't waiting for me. Part of me was. She looked at me. I can admit that now. I took her hand. I wish I had chosen you then. No. The answer surprised me. Sophia shook her head. You wouldn't have known how. I thought about it, she was right. The younger me would have loved Sophia badly too, maybe differently, but badly. I had confused devotion with self-erasure, loyalty with surrender, forgiveness with weakness, success with control. I had needed to lose everything once to understand that keeping a person at any cost was not love. Sophia squeezed my hand. I hated Olivia for a while. Really? Of course. You hid it well. I'm sophisticated. You threatened to throw a chair at her once. Emotionally sophisticated. I laughed. She rested her head against my shoulder. Do you ever think about what your life would have been if you stayed with her? Every day. 4 years. I had remembered the first timeline, it had never completely vanished. Sometimes I dreamed of concrete beneath my face. Sometimes I woke convinced prison guards were outside the bedroom. Sometimes I still reached for my phone to call my mother before remembering she was sleeping 3 neighborhoods away. Rebirth had not erased what I had lived, it had simply given me the power to choose what came after it. Yes, I said. Sophia lifted her head, and I looked at our hands. Her wedding ring caught the last light over the river. I think I spent one lifetime learning the difference between being chosen and being valued. She watched me quietly. And this one? I smiled. This one I choose back.